Hello and welcome to Friday Live. I am your host, Amanda Farmer, and we are going out live to the Your Strata Property Facebook page, also out to LinkedIn, out to YouTube. How are you all doing on this Friday? How has your week in Strata been? That's what we are here to chat about today. This is your wrap up of the week in Strata. It's great to be here with you. I am planning a longer session today. This is a Friday Live, a little bit different to our shorter Ask Amanda Now sessions. Usually when I am at home and have a little bit more time on a Friday afternoon, we can do a Friday Live where we can have a deeper dive into some of the most pressing Strata challenges that may be circling us at this point in time. You may have noticed that even though this is a Friday Live and I've said we have hopefully up to an hour together, I am not at home in my home studio today. I am out and about. I am, though I'm not in my home office or home studio, I am close to my home. I am still in Mudgee, which is where I spend a lot of my time these days. That is in regional New South Wales, Central West New South Wales, and I'm just up the street. I'm up the street at the moment. I am at the Three Tails Brewery and Smokehouse. Some of you have seen me at Three Tails before. We have done a Friday Live from this location. I'm in a different spot today. I'll give you a little tour, a little twirl, different spot to where you might have seen me previously when I've been here at the brewery. You can see here this awesome Three Tails logo behind me. I'll just get my lefts and rights sorted out here. Give you a spin. I'm in this quiet room out the back, which is, it's actually quite warm. It was colder earlier. We've got the heater going now. All the sensible people who don't need to do a Friday Live afternoon Strata session are inside by the fire. So I'll just give you a little, the brewer is here, but he's hiding from me. Give you a little tour here of famous Three Tails Brewery there, and the brewer hiding in the background. The brewer is my husband, Scott. So that's where he makes his beer here in Mudgee. And that's where I am today. Today's exciting location. I'm going to perch myself back here on my chair so we can actually talk some Strata today. Lots of you coming on in. I can see you there. If you want to drop me a hello and let me know what you're up to this Friday afternoon, please do go on ahead. I can see Melissa McPherson already saying to me, hi, have one for me. A beer at the brewery? Well, here's the thing, Melissa. I am having one, but it's not a beer. It's a very nice tasting gin and a blood orange tonic, I think it is, that's got sourced for me here. Got my little table all set up here, nice and comfy for a Friday afternoon. Good to see you here, Melissa. Sean is here saying, hi, Amanda. Hey, Sean, great to see you. Scrolling on down those comments that are coming through. Debbie is here saying, hi. Hey, Debbie, how you doing? Denise is here. Hi. Melissa is giving me the okay on the gin, saying that works too. Great, good to know. Anthony is here saying hi. Good to see you, Anthony. Awesome. Lots of you coming on in for our Friday afternoon. Has been a busy week, has been a busy day. That's why I'm winding down here now at the brewery. Podcast recorded today. I have a really exciting episode coming out for you with a guest who's doing some really creative things in the Strata space. I know that many of you are going to enjoy that interview, which is all about solving one of the big P problems that we have in Strata. You often hear people talk about the 3 Ps of Strata: pets, parking, parties. Well, my guest, who is coming up on the podcast soon, maybe next week, maybe the week after, we'll check the schedule, is solving one of those problems for us. So I know you're going to look forward to hearing from her. What else? Today I got my hair done. Today. So we have newer, shorter hair. I often get asked who my hairdresser is by some of you, by the way, who private message me and contact me on LinkedIn. And when I'm in Sydney, I get my hair done at my hairdresser there. When I'm in Mudgee, I have a great hairdresser here, so I'm very lucky. Those women out there who are short-haired women like me will understand how important it is to have a good hairdresser nearby. We're often in the chair, so that's been done today. Many more of you coming on in saying hi. Sean Birmingham is here. Hey, Sean, how you doing? Maureen is here saying hi and enjoy. Thank you, Maureen. Edward is saying hi, Amanda. Good to see you here, Edward. Sean is giving me a different acronym. So Sean is not talking about the 3 Ps. Sean's talking about the CRAP, which is children, rubbish, animals, and parking. I like that one, Sean. I like that one. Thank you for sharing that. Excellent. Who has already checked out this week's podcast episode number 324? We are up to James Bergen, an owner in a self-managed block of 6 units in Bondi, has just completed, along with his fellow owners, a surprisingly affordable cosmetic upgrade, and it has, he says, turned his home into a joyful place to come home to, and it has also helpfully dramatically increased the value of each apartment. James shares that with me on this week's podcast episode. A lot of you giving me your feedback, your comments on that episode already. I know Denise posted under the episode that it was wonderful to hear a positive, feel good story, and coming out of a space where we're often talking about problems, we're talking about challenges. It's good to hear from those who are not just surviving Strata, but thriving. And James is definitely one of those people. So I'm really pleased that he was able to share his story with us on the podcast. Denise is here saying, yeah, great pod. Yep, definitely. Penny is saying, hi, good to see you here, Penny. Michelle is popping in just on the hair topic, I think. A good man is hard to find. A good hairdresser, impossible. Yes. Well, and if you got one, go hang on to it. Yes. The brewer is just exiting the building. So I'm being left here in the brewery with my non-beer and my laptop and my light and all of you. So hope they don't lock me in here. Denise, great pod. Yes, thank you, Denise. And Bill and Ben are saying curb appeal equals dollars. That's what it's all about. And James definitely talks about that in this week's podcast episode. The money that each owner put in, it was about $8,000 each for approximately $50,000 cosmetic upgrade. A lot of that money went to improving the external appearance of the building and doing some landscaping. That's where James's passion is, and just making the building look a lot nicer from the outside. And when agents have come through to value the properties, they've said that just this relatively small expenditure has increased the value of those properties anywhere between 5 and 10%. And when we're looking at properties in Bondi, Sydney's eastern suburbs, that's up to $200,000 uplift on the value of those properties. So excellent story there for James to share. Some of you have mentioned to me, sent me other messages saying, we want to hire James. Where do we get James? Can James please come and do our upgrade? He seems to be a man in the know who is very good at finding the deals and doing a lot of hands-on work himself. One of those champions that very high-functioning, successful communities often have, leading the charge with these projects. And James also pointed out that his community is now a lot more collaborative, a lot more friendly. They're ready to take on the next project. It's really brought them together as a community. And I'm really glad that he was able to share that. I also like James's comment that he has a new neighbour, somebody new has bought into the building, and he hasn't met that person yet, but he spied in their storage cage that they have a level stored in there, a builder's level. And so he's got his eye on them as someone else who might be handy and might be able to help around the building. So I'm sure we'll be hearing more from James and his adventures another time, perhaps. So more of you coming in and saying hello to me. Good to see you. Iggy is here saying hi. Hey, Iggy, how you doing? Awesome. All right, now last week in our Ask Amanda Now session, which was supposed to be a short 10-minute, 15-minute session. I think it ended up being about 25 minutes to half an hour. That was a hot topic. I answered Susan's question about aggressive committee members. How do we deal with aggressive committee members or committee members who aren't doing the right thing, aren't following the important rules that are set down for people who are in their position of decision making, elected representatives of the owners corporation? What laws are they breaking when they behave poorly, when they do not act in good faith or with due diligence or in the best interests of the owners corporation? So we talked through some of that last week. If you didn't manage to catch that video, it's still here on the page for you, this time last Friday. Lots of you tuning in, lots of you commenting, sharing your own experiences of dealing with difficult committee members in particular. And it has caused me to reflect a little bit on whether this type of behavior may have become more common, more dominant, maybe just more obvious during the pandemic and during the lockdowns that we've had. More people living in their homes, working in their homes than we've ever seen before. People under stress, financial stress, not sure what might be happening with their employment, particularly at the beginning of the pandemic. And I don't think that poor behavior, lack of regard for other people, selfish behavior, I don't think that's limited to our strata space. Certainly in business circles that I move in, I hear other business owners say, hey, are people's clients, are people's customers particularly demanding since the pandemic and certainly during the pandemic? What is that about? Is everybody just feeling a bit blur and a bit over it and a bit I deserve and I need and I can't handle anymore? So I don't have an answer for you in that respect, but I just wanted to share that that's where my thoughts are around whether maybe if we're seeing this behavior become more common, more dominant, more obvious, impacting more people, by which I mean some poor behavior, poor communications on the part of our committee members. I wonder if that is a symptom of the difficult time that humans as a whole have been having over the last few years. I was working with a client just this week who is a member on a committee that appears to be dysfunctional. And that client was able to share with me some emails that had been passing amongst the committee members. And some of the words in those emails, some of the comments that were being made were rough, let me put it that way, hurtful. If they were directed at you, I could see how they could be hurtful, accusatory, intimidatory, harassing, threatening in some parts. And these were emails that were just flying around most days among committee members. And this particular person had come to see me to say, Amanda, how do we stop this? This is toxic. This is a toxic environment. And we really need to get on top of this. So that occurring right in the context of me talking about these difficulties and Susan asking her question about how do we deal with aggressive committee members. Now, last week I did mention that I had a couple of podcast episodes where I discuss communication strategies and communication styles, in particular in Strata. I want to share with you the links to those episodes if you haven't come across them yet. The episodes that I have in mind are episode number 259, which is titled Strata Managers Are Not Punching Bags. Some of you may remember that episode. That arose from me hearing from many strata managers that they were dealing with some pretty rough, some pretty full-on communications, and they were fed up. Their mental health, their well-being was being affected, and they reached out wanting some strategies for how to deal with those communications. Now, I think that the same applies to those of you who are committee members dealing with difficult communications from fellow committee members and residents who may be dealing and owners who may be dealing with difficult communications from committee members. So if you haven't checked out episode number 259, then that is a good one to check out. In that episode, I'm sharing 3 ways that we can improve communications to save time, to save money, and to save your sanity. In that episode, I also mention the communications bylaw. So that is a template bylaw that you can access through the website. If you're a member, it is free to you. If you're not a member, it's just $147. A bylaw template that you can implement in your community to help regulate communications, improve communications. And it expressly sets out in that bylaw that if communications don't reach a certain standard, and that standard is described in the bylaw, then those communications can be ignored by the recipient. And that's really where we get to. When I was talking to my client earlier in the week and saying, hey, you shouldn't have to put up with this. This person said to me, but Amanda, I'm not comfortable ignoring the communications. I think that's impolite. I don't feel that I should, these might be important emails. I don't think I should just not open them, not that I should ignore them. And we discussed that process of telling the sender who is not communicating appropriately that if they continue to communicate in that way, then their communications will be ignored. And in the most serious situations, that their email address will be blocked from your email account, because you should not have to put up with harassing, threatening, abusive, intimidatory, accusatory communications. And having a communications bylaw to fall back on, I know has assisted many communities to say, well, we all decided in a general meeting, or most of us decided in a general meeting, that this would be our standard of communication. It's time now to enforce that standard in accordance with our bylaw. So if you haven't checked out the communications bylaw template, do check that one out. It's free to the members inside our community, and otherwise available for you to purchase if you're not a member in our community. I know Rochelle, who's helping me out here today, has a link to that one for you. In addition to episode 259, Strata managers are not punching bags, episode 258 from the week before that is also worth a listen. That's where I had a chat to PR guru, Elizabeth Huesler. She's sometimes here on the page as well. I'm not sure if Elizabeth is tuning in today. And Elizabeth shares some communication strategies, both for Strata managers and for residents as well, including the art of saying sorry. Why saying sorry is not a learned skill, Elizabeth explains. It's not a natural ability. Rather, I should say, saying sorry is a learned skill. It's not a natural ability. And Elizabeth talks a little bit in that episode about how you might learn that skill. And I think it is a very important one for our professionals to be learning. We don't always get it right. And particularly in the fast moving space that is Strata, fast changing, we can't expect to always get it right and to always be across it. So being able to master that art of recognizing when you're wrong and when sorry might be the right thing to say, it is a good art to learn. And Elizabeth does give us some tips in that episode number 258. So we've got a link for that here as well, if you haven't checked that out. Something we spoke about in last week's chat as well, when dealing with committee members who may not be living up to the standard that is expected of them, is required of them as committee members, what about a code of conduct? How many buildings have in place a code of conduct that sets out these standards for committee members in particular, and sets out what may happen if committee members don't meet those standards? Now, having heard that I was talking about codes of conduct last week, a very generous member of our community, I know she doesn't mind me saying, her name is Carleen, she gave me permission to share her committee's code of conduct with you all to show you a little sneak peek, as I like to say, at her code of conduct. And I thought it was a good one to share. I am going to share my screen and show you parts of it. I thought it was a good one to share because I found it quite straightforward. Quite simple. It is one page. It is not complex. It is not lengthy. It doesn't have a lot of rules in it. And hopefully it will inspire some of you as committee members, or perhaps as owners who may not be on the committee but would like your committee to implement a code of conduct, inspire you to put one together to get started. So I'll open up my screen now and just share with you the copy that was shared to me. I have de-identified it here. I'll just hide that ribbon there so you can have a nice big screen. Rochelle will jump in my ear if for some reason I'm not sharing the right thing here. A code of conduct for Strata committee members. So very cleverly, I think I spoke about these sections of our New South Wales legislation last week, but Carlene's building it was all over it already. Mentioning the legislation, Section 37 imposes a duty on the members of the Strata Committee to carry out their functions for the benefit of the Owners Corporation and with due care and diligence. Section 260 provides an indemnity for members of the Strata Committee for any of their actions as members of the committee if those actions are done in good faith for the purpose of executing their functions. Section 260 is not one that I spoke about last week, but it is an important one, and indeed that is what it does. If the committee members are acting in accordance with their functions and in good faith, then they are protected by Section 260, and anything that they do or don't do is then sheeted home to the Owners Corporation rather than to them personally. Now, an adoption of the following code of conduct by all committee members will help ensure compliance with the duties imposed by the Act and provide the indemnity set out in Section 260. And there are some notes here for you, some points rather, I should say, some fairly straightforward points here about what Strata committee members will do. They will act impartially, honestly and fairly, and in the interests of the Owners Corporation, respectfully and politely. Set a good example. Attend a Strata Association training module paid for by the Owners Corporation. Oh, I like that one. I didn't notice that one earlier, Carlene. I'd be interested to know where it is that you're sending your committee members to do that training. Disclose to the committee any potential conflict between their own interests and the matter before the committee, and abstain from voting where there is a conflict. Make reasonable efforts to attend meetings. Respond in a timely manner. Respect and support decisions of the Strata Committee. And here there is a requirement to sign that code of conduct. Now that is super, super duper straightforward there, not complex, not over the top, no legalese there, and really easy to put together and apply in your community. I'm just looking for my stop share button, so I'll come back to you here. Excellent. Thank you very much, Carlene, for sharing that with me and allowing me to share that with our viewers here. I'm seeing a few comments come on through. I'm just going to head over to that chat box, which has been filling up while I've had my eyes off it. David's here saying hi. Hi, David from Neutral Bay. How are you? Margaret, good to see you. Good to have you here with us. Okay. Bill and Ben has a comment for us, which I am going to show because, Bill and Ben, I missed you last week when I know you had some great comments on this topic. Whether Strata Committee members are volunteers or paid agents of the Owners Corporation, the Owners Corporation cannot reasonably expect the recipients of correspondence to be exposed to voluminous, repetitive and abusive tirades. Yeah, that's the Tank Tower case, which comes out of Queensland. Thank you for sharing that, Bill and Ben. I talk about that case in my Bylaws webinar, which I'm going to tell you a little bit about shortly. The Tank Tower case is a great one. I love that case. I really like the approach that was taken in terms of regulating communications from what was a very difficult, I think it's fair to say, very difficult owner. And in putting together my communications bylaw template, I actually took parts of that judgment and incorporated it into the terms of the bylaw. So unnecessarily voluminous, I really like that word, repetitive, abusive communications, those words are in the bylaw, and I have taken those directly from that Tank Tower case. In that case, there were orders made that prevented the difficult owner from communicating with their committee, body corporate committee, unless the communications met a certain standard, which included, from memory, that the communications were no more than 1,000 words or 2 pages. And I believe they had to be sent by mail as well. This person was banned from using email. I shouldn't laugh because it would have been a very difficult situation for that body corporate committee at the time. I'm not aware, you guys are always very good at letting me know, I'm not aware of other similar, perhaps more recent cases where there have been difficult communications and orders made against a sender and restrictions placed on a sender of communications. In the Tank Tower case, they did have a bylaw. They did have a communications bylaw. It was very straightforward. I think it was only 3 or 4 lines. But also of interest in that case, the adjudicator or commissioner, whoever it was deciding it, did say that even without a bylaw, they thought that the communications were a nuisance and therefore breached the nuisance provisions of the Queensland legislation. And we do have the exact same nuisance provisions in our New South Wales legislation. So really fascinating area from a legal point of view, and definitely something that I talk about in a bit more detail on my bylaws webinars, which I will tell you a bit more about in just a minute. I'm going to scroll through some more of these comments here to make sure I've picked everybody up. Elizabeth Hughesley is here. Elizabeth, I don't know if you just dropped in, but I mentioned our podcast chat earlier, episode number 258 of the podcast. So it's good to see you here. Elizabeth saying we have a code of conduct, but it's subjective and the committee are never in breach as it's self-monitoring and thus useless. Yeah, really interesting point there, Elizabeth. If the code is indeed self-monitoring, as many of them are, we're asking our committee members, as usually they are, we're asking our committee members to sign up to it, agree that they'll comply with it. It is up to the committee to enforce it. And some codes I've seen, not the one that I've just shown you on the screen, but some codes I've seen say that if you're in breach of this code, then you will be invited to resign your position from the committee. But I take your point, Elizabeth, that is indeed self-monitoring. Okay, Bill and Ben is back with code of conduct comment here. We had a code of conduct. Those who implemented broke it the most, similar to what Elizabeth's saying, and they only enforced it on others. Shame, unbiased about the code of conduct wasn't in the code of conduct. Yes, indeed. While you're here, Bill and Ben, and I'm looking at your comments, I forgot to, no, I haven't forgotten. I'm going to get to it. Let's park that one. I'm coming back to you. Cheryl is here saying, I'm running late. Hello, Amanda. Nice to see you, Cheryl. Maureen is saying, sometimes it's the committee that's in the wrong. You're all saying the same thing here, guys. I'm hearing you, and no one will listen to the other owners. Interesting. This is where a bylaw may come in handy, because a bylaw can be enforced, I'm going to say enforced this way, by other owners. It doesn't have to be left up to the owners corporation or the committee to enforce a bylaw. I'm often asked in other contexts, perhaps not always communications, but noise in particular. Amanda, I'm suffering because I have a neighbour upstairs who's clomping around at 2 a.m. and I'm finding it really hard to get the committee to take any action. Does the owners corporation have to enforce its bylaws? Where's the law that says the owners corporation has to enforce its bylaws? Well, in New South Wales, there ain't no such law. The owners corporation doesn't have to enforce its bylaws. The bylaws are there, and it's usually a matter for the committee whether they are enforced or not. However, an owner, and indeed a resident, a tenant, has standing before our tribunal to seek orders, and those orders may include that your neighbour complies with the noise bylaw. So you are not left without a remedy if your owner's corporation won't enforce its own bylaws. You can take matters into your own hands. And whilst you can't seek a penalty order, you can seek an order that there be compliance with a bylaw, or that something be done, or that something stop being done, in order to resolve a problem that may be linked to a breach of the bylaws. So that's one to remember. And I'm hearing what you're saying. Many of you, in the context of committees and conduct and codes of conduct, the committee won't self-regulate in a way that's fair and reasonable. So perhaps that's why a bylaw and a communications bylaw might be a good way to go. And Chris is saying, can we get a copy of the page that you shared? I might be able to arrange that through a link. Yeah, I should be able to arrange that through a link, Chris. I can head back around and see if I can post that link. I do have permission from Carleen to share that. And I just want to head back, Zlata. I missed Zlata's comment here where she's saying most behaviour has now deteriorated in many schemes and it's deliberate. Zlata, I'm not sure if you were tuning in when I was first kicking off talking about this issue of communications and conduct. And you've echoed what I've said earlier, which is I wonder if the last few years has been particularly bad because of what we've been facing with a global pandemic and people being under more pressure and more stress than ever before. Because I think many would agree with you that behaviour has deteriorated in, I don't know about many schemes, but in certain communities during this period. We're definitely hearing more of it. Strata managers will tell you about the burdens that they've been suffering over the last few years. Alrighty. So that is codes of conduct, that is communications, that is dealing with bad behaviour. Did any of you see my cheeky, I'm going to call it cheeky, video that I posted to the page here last night, where I kicked off by saying Strata is a joke? It's a joke. Tongue in cheek, of course. However, that video has prompted Bill and Ben, told you I was coming back to you, prompted Bill and Ben to post some lawyer jokes below that video. So if you want to read some lawyer jokes, head down here later to that video, which I'm hoping I'm pointing in the right direction, is down below. I don't know where I am on the page. It could be above. And watch the video and read Bill and Ben's jokes. So, of course, Strata is not a joke. That is not what I believe. But I do accept, I know that there are some people out there in Strata land, our Strata world, who do feel like that. These are comments that get posted here on the page, that get posted on social. I would never buy in Strata. Strata is a joke. Strata is just whatever the committee says happens. We're having a discussion right now about how easy it is for Strata committees to ignore their own bad behaviour. And some people choose not to live in or not to invest in Strata for that reason, that it is all too hard, too unfair. Some people still live in Strata even though they feel this frustration, because that's the option that's available to them, either as a tenant or as an owner. They need to live in a particular area. The budget within that area when it comes to accommodation only allows them to live in Strata, and a freestanding home is not available. But they still feel that Strata's a joke. It's something to be avoided. It's a place where the bullies get their own way, where there is injustice and where there is unfairness. And sometimes for people who feel that way, that's the end of the story. That's it. There is no further investigation around those feelings, around why they may be feeling that way, and whether there could be a way to resolve those feelings. Under the video as well, Daryl commented that one of the most common things that he hears, often from people who have bought into Strata and now don't understand what it is this question: what do you mean I can't do this without asking permission? Many of us would have experienced that both as managers and as committee members. And I think Daryl's hit the nail on the head a little bit there. And if you watch the full video, it's only about 30-40 seconds long. It's indeed what I was getting at, that these are people who have bought into Strata and don't understand what it is. Some owners are not fully informed. And if you're not fully informed, then often you're not completely empowered to solve the inevitable, I now know, inevitable problems that come with community living. Another area that new residents often don't understand is bylaws. We've been talking about bylaws today. I know most of you, I would think, here on the page who are interacting regularly, who are turning up to Friday Live, who are members inside our community, will have a great handle on what bylaws are, what their purpose is, who enforces the bylaws and who has rights to enforce the bylaws, and what the role of bylaws is when things go wrong in a building. Daryl's example, when someone renovates without approval, where do the bylaws come in there? And what most people don't realize when they buy in to Strata is just how extensive the power of an owners corporation, of a Strata committee is to regulate other owners and residents. And often that regulation is happening through bylaws. And the bylaw making power, I was going to say in New South Wales, I think across most parts of our country, the bylaw making power is huge. There are very few restrictions on this power. I've already talked about a communications bylaw. People can use a bylaw to regulate how other people communicate. That is novel. There are not many other areas, if any, of our law, and certainly not property law, where our private citizens are empowered to regulate other private citizens. Now, next Wednesday, the 17th of August, I will be online delivering a webinar for North Sydney Council all about the power of bylaws, and in particular, the power that bylaws have to combat bad behaviour in our communities and to restore peace to our troubled communities. And I would like to extend an invitation to each and every one of you to join me on that webinar. It's happening at midday on Wednesday, the 17th of August. It is completely free, but you do need to be registered to attend. Rochelle has a link for us that she's going to put in the comments here. And if you're watching us over on LinkedIn or on YouTube, we'll head over and pop that link over there as well. The webinar is being run through Zoom. We kick off at midday. We'll probably run till about 1:30 p.m. Those of you who have been on my webinars before will know that they are jam-packed with value, and we do set aside a good chunk of time for questions. So if you have a Strata question, especially about bylaws, then you want to get in on that webinar. So we're going to be talking about top bylaws that you should have, that I say as a Strata lawyer you should have in place in your community, things you might not yet have thought about, similar to the communications bylaw. I am going to talk a bit more about communications bylaws next week. Some ideas for some great bylaws that you might want to put in place to regulate things like noise, like rubbish and waste disposal. I've been working very closely with North Sydney Council to put together a template bylaw, which will be made available to residents of North Sydney Council buildings next Wednesday, that they can immediately go away and implement to help manage the waste within their building. The rubbish, what goes in what bins, council collections, that will be available on the webinar as well to our North Sydney Council residents. But even if you are not a resident of North Sydney Council, there will be a lot of value there for you in that bylaws webinar next Wednesday, the 17th of August at midday. I will be online. It is live. I will be there just like I am here, except I won't be here. I will be there. That will be on Zoom. Got to register and you will get your unique access link to get into that webinar. Heading back to these comments, which have been conversation that's been happening over here on Facebook. Denise is saying, yes, education is the key. That's why I think the welcome package idea is so important. Yeah, Denise is talking about the welcome pack, which was offered to all new members who joined our membership community last month, a couple of months ago. It's time flies when you're having fun, Denise. The welcome template welcome pack I made available to those new members that I know many of you are now putting in place. Look, I say that becoming an informed strata owner is the fastest way to more peaceful and more profitable apartment living. So those who say strata's a joke, never buy in strata, the committee rules the roost, there's no fairness, there's no justice in strata. I often find that those are people who haven't been able to, for whatever reason, tap into the power that knowledge can bring you when you know where to go to get it, when you invest the time and the energy, sometimes the money, into accessing that knowledge and finding out more about how this complex, yes, I acknowledge complex world works, because I see owners every day who are taking those steps, who are investing the time, the energy, the money into discovering what those empowering avenues are that are available to restore peace to their lives, their homes, their communities. So thank you, Denise, for sharing that. More comments from Bill and Ben. I'll come back around to that. Bill and Ben. Okay. Debbie's saying, I need to have a private discussion with you about my situation in Queensland. Okay, might be able to refer you to some of my Queensland colleagues there, Debbie. I do get contacted to give legal advice in states where I am not qualified to give legal advice, but I do have my ready list of colleagues that I can direct you to, Debbie, so happy to do that. Stan is here saying hi from Foster. Good to see you, Stan. Thank you for saying hi. There's a bit of back and forth happening in the comments that I'm just going to leave that. I'm going to leave that be. All right, excellent. Now, before I leave the topic of bylaws, the members who are here from inside our membership community will know that there is a bylaw template that has been circulated this week as your member resource for this week. It is a template bylaw for the disposal of abandoned goods on the common property. This has been on my list for a little while. Those of you who have been in our space for at least a couple of years now, mostly managers, will know that our New South Wales legislation used to have provisions in there that allowed an owners corporation to remove abandoned goods from the common property, including motor vehicles from the common property, by putting a notice on them, leaving the notice on there for at least 5 days, and then if the goods or vehicle were not removed, then the owners corporation could remove it, and for that purpose was taken to be the owner of the goods. Now, a couple of years ago, that legislation disappeared. It was repealed. It was removed out of our Strata Schemes Management Act and Strata Schemes Management Regulation without any notice, as far as I could see, without any report that had happened. A Strata manager colleague of mine, Tim Sara from Strata Choice, stumbled across it, brought it to my attention, said, Amanda, those sections are gone. What do we do now about abandoned goods on the common property? And the short answer to that in New South Wales is that you must follow the provisions in the Uncollected Goods Act of 1995. Those provisions are a little bit complicated, a little bit convoluted, or at least that was my opinion when I first looked at them. I've pulled those out now after being asked numerous times to create a bylaw that specifically enshrines that process. I pulled those out now and have created that bylaw, and that's been circulated to our members this week as your member resource, your template disposal of abandoned goods on the common property bylaw. So if that hasn't hit your inbox, reach out to Rochelle and let her know. And as always, our bylaw templates are available for purchase if you're not a member inside our community. So I think we've got a link Do we have a link? Yes, we do. We have a link to that one for anyone who'd like to get their hands on that. Rochelle will pop it in here. All right, now we have a little bit more time. I have a little bit more pink gin. One moment. And we have a great question that was sent through by Alan. And I'm not sure if Alan is tuning in. I didn't give him a heads up that I was going to answer this one because I wasn't sure if we were going to have time. But Alan and I were having a bit of a discussion in Messenger, Facebook Messenger, through the Your Strata Property Facebook page about a couple of things that were happening in his building. And just today, he has sent through a very good question, I think, that may assist a number of you who are working with renovation bylaws, renovation requests in your building, whether you're strata managers or committee members who are dealing with these requests from owners. I'll let you know what Alan's question is, and then we'll get into my thoughts on the answer. So Alan said that he received an agenda for a general meeting in New South Wales from the strata manager for an owner who wants to renovate their kitchen, their bathroom, their living room, their flooring. They want to put air conditioning in, they want to waterproof. And the bylaw is to grant the owner the permission to do that extensive work. And the permission is granted under the relevant sections in the New South Wales legislation. Now, the conditions of the bylaw require that the owner has to provide all plans, all insurances, license details of contractors before the works commence. That's a condition of the bylaw. And Alan has said that he read that bylaw and he would like to, as an owner who's voting on whether or not to approve that bylaw, he would like to see the plans, the insurances, the license details of the contractors who are doing the work. And when Alan requested those details, he was told, I presume by the strata manager, if not by the owner directly, that until the bylaw is approved, then these documents don't exist. They haven't been provided by the owner. The strata manager doesn't have the documents yet. So Alan has asked, what are your views, Amanda? Should these documents be available to owners at the time the bylaw is being considered, or is it correct that until the bylaw is considered, then none of these, until the bylaw is made, then none of these documents are relevant? And I went like this. I went, ooh, that's a good question. So in Alan's situation, he's mentioned that there are plans. There are plans that I imagine describe the work that is being done. Now, in my view, a bylaw doesn't describe with enough particularity, with enough specificity, the work that is being carried out and its impact on the common property, unless there are some plans, there are some drawings attached, there are some specifications setting out what it is that's happening on the common property. And in Alan's situation, we're talking about some reasonably major work: kitchen, bathroom, living room, flooring, new waterproofing. And if the bylaw refers to work being carried out in accordance with plans, then in my view, the plans should be attached to the bylaw and should be there for owners to look at when they're considering whether to vote yay or nay on the bylaw. Okay, when I'm drafting bylaws for owners, that's what I advise, and that's what I provide on their behalf when I send the bylaw in to the strata manager. The other documents that Alan has pointed out in his communication with the strata manager that he says are missing from the bylaw are the insurance and the license details of the contractors who are going to carry out the work. Does that need to be provided before the bylaw is voted on? Now, Alan, different to the plans, that those documents are things that I do think can be provided once the bylaw has been approved at a general meeting and the owner has actually then gone ahead and engaged contractors to carry out the work as approved at the meeting, because it's quite likely that the owner hasn't yet engage those contractors. So they don't know who they're going to be. They don't have those license and insurance details. But it is important that the bylaw has that condition that before the work commences, those details are provided to the Strata committee so that the Strata committee at least has that information. And as an owner, you would be entitled to access that information through the Strata committee to ask the Strata committee, hey, can I see that? If this is a neighbour that's above you and you want to make sure everything's going to be done properly, you know it was a condition of the bylaw that this work not commence until those documents and those details were obtained by the owner and provided to the committee. Then go ahead and ask the committee if you can see those documents indeed. So great question. Really liked that one. I hope that's helpful for you, Alan, and for anyone else who is considering renovation applications, strata managers perhaps, who are putting these bylaws on the agenda. It's quite possible that a common property rights bylaw, so a bylaw that grants an owner the privilege to use part of the common property, it's quite possible that if that bylaw doesn't define with enough particularity and specificity, then doesn't define the areas that the owner is impacting on the common property, that bylaw might not be valid. So that's the reason why I say plans are so important, and bylaws have been declared to be invalid by our tribunal where they don't define the area of property that's being affected. So that's why plans are so important at that stage of considering the bylaw itself. Maureen is saying, thanks for all of your input. Thank you, Maureen, for saying so. All right, now I am going to wrap up. I am, anyone who wasn't here for my intro can scroll back and see where I am today. I gave you a little tour, but it also means that I am tethered to my phone, so I can get the best quality internet here for you. I'm on 5G and my phone is just about to lose battery. So I am going to say thank you very much for tuning in with me here today. I've had a lot of fun. Haven't got through my drink because I've been talking too much, but I think I'm going to do that now. Sit back and chill here in my quiet corner of the Three Tails Brewery and Smokehouse in Mudgee and say happy weekend to you all. Enjoy your weekend in or out of Strata, whether you're joking about it or not. I hope that you can join me on our Bylaws webinar next Wednesday, the 17th of August. And if not there, then I'll probably see you next Friday. Hey, heads up, next Friday is going to be really cool. I have some friends who are coming to visit me in Mudgee next Friday. And I haven't mentioned this to them yet, but I think we can do a live together. And these are Strata friends. These are names, faces, personalities, people you will know and love like I do. So we do have an activity planned next Friday, and I might be able to convince my friends, my guests, to jump on to a Friday afternoon quick chat with you while we're in the middle of that activity, which does involve, see how we go. Happy weekend. Have a great week in Strata next week. And if I don't catch you on Wednesday, I'll see you on Friday. It's not Kathy, Sherry, Bill, and Ben. It's good though.